name, say the other tow guy, John Dorenzo.
Okay. Okay, we are live streaming now. All right, it's 5 o'clock. Who else do we have on? Do we have a quorum?
We're just
Hello,
missing
Trustee Lindsay.
Monique. Mhm.
Mary Kate, okay. So we're all set to call the meeting to order? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Internal External Committee meeting to order. Nanette, can you take a roll call, please?
Yes, Mary Kate Murin,
Present.
Janae McDonald,
Present.
Elizabeth Bosito,
Present.
Bill Johnson,
Present.
Maurice Lindsay,
Present.
and Monique Seldom Riley.
Present.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to start out with the report on enrollment outlook.
Thank you so much, Trustee McDonald. Good evening. I'm going to click got it here. And I'm going to kick us off for our enrollment management perspective this evening. Next slide, please. So I'm going to cover our spring enrollment and give you a snapshot of spring 22 and the spring 1 semester, along with headcount and registered credits, and then share some information about our student vaccination compliance as we begin our spring semester here. And then Dr. DeBurley will present some program enrollment by school, and Dr. Shea Butler will finish out our enrollment management perspective with program reinstatement marketing to matriculation. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that you may seem familiar to you. We do try to share this daily enrollment report, which is a point in time or a snapshot of our registration day. In particular, we looked at registration day 73 of the cycle. So we're comparing our data on January 27th of this year to data which is from 129 of last year. And this again is day 73. So just keep in mind, this is a snapshot or a point in time piece of information. So you can see that on day 73, we were up 8.5% in the new student head count and down 10.8% in our continuing student head count, for an overall percentage down of 7.3%. But what you'll notice if you look at the total registered credits, we're down more percentage-wise compared to this day last year at 9.4%. So you might recall that is a data point that was similar to what we saw entering fall semester. I did also include on this slide the comparison from 21 to 20 as well. So on day 73, heading into last spring, we were down 28.4% in new student headcount, down 17% in continuing student headcount, and down 20.9% in registered credits. So you'll notice the registered credits again is down more from a percentage standpoint from the headcount. Next slide, please. So the registered credits and headcount here are also from day 73, but it gives you a longer term perspective of the data. So from spring of 2018, which is on the left side of the grid, all the way through spring 22, which is on the right side of the grid. So you can see that while new student numbers exceed that of last spring, we're markedly down from spring of 20. So again, we've made some gains in our new student numbers here, being at 754 on this registration day compared to 695 last year, but wanted to put it in the context of having 970 new students entering spring of 20. Continuing student registration numbers persist in a downward trajectory. We will continue to utilize Spring 2 as an opportunity to influence positively our registered credit numbers. You may recall some strategies that we've talked about in the past where we contact currently enrolled students to let them know if they have a course that's part of their degree plan that they still need to take. We'll contact students, for example, who may be enrolled in 6 to 9 credits, see how they're doing and if they might be interested in another course. So we'll continue to partner extensively with academic affairs on these initiatives. And that's from Dr. DeBurley and myself to the deans and the assistant deans, all the way to our professional advisors in the Academic Advising and Transfer Center, collaborating with faculty advisors as well. It's critically important that we work in tandem to try to influence enrollment as positively as possible. And we still have some time to do so for that Spring 2 semester. Next slide, please.
I have one question. I'm sorry,
Yes,
Darcy.
no problem.
And I wanted to make sure I was interpreting the data right when I was reviewing it. So are any of those, like the continuing student numbers, is it just to those stopping out or not returning for whatever reason? Or is some of that due to the student completing their course or their program?
Their graduation requirements.
Right.
Really great question. I don't have the December graduation data, but that's certainly something we can take a look at. What the continuing numbers show here is of those students who had been with us in a previous semester, those who are eligible to return and get registered. So we call it our not registered list. And so those are students who were at least enrolled with us for the previous semester. But what we have done for the last 2 years now is go back actually 5 semesters. And another strategy that we've implemented is an enrollment intention survey. So in a few weeks, we'll send out a survey to the currently enrolled students, see what they're thinking about next fall, where they're at from a sort of perspective and behavioral sort of mindset of what they're thinking about next fall. But we'll also do that for students who did not end up enrolling with us this semester and just get a sense of what were the reasons that impacted their decision not to continue enrolling with us. And this is a very high touch outreach that's done. We're talking like phone call campaign, individual to the student. And we take notes on the reasons why the student is not going to register. And sometimes they tell us, not now, not this semester, but please call me in preparation of next fall. So we keep very detailed lists so that number one, we don't keep calling a student when they've told us, you know, what their intentions are, but also so that we don't lose sight of them if we need to reconnect with them for a future semester. So.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really important to hear. And that's a lot of the conversation that is also being pushed nationally. So thank you for providing that further explanation. Okay.
Yes, my pleasure.
And the touch is going and, you know, getting our students re-engaged and getting them to return. So thank you.
Yeah. This last slide here was also a very high touch initiative that really crossed every single department and division at the institution. So I want to acknowledge that the student vaccination policy and the process that was put into place for that was an enormously collaborative effort. I don't think I could even name all of the individuals who were involved in making this happen, but I've shared before that what was so encouraging about our process was that it was very student-centered. We worked so closely to ensure that students were registering for the courses that they were interested in for spring semester in the modality that they preferred, and worked towards that spring semester deadline to help them become compliant with the policy. And I'm happy to report that 92% of students who are taking a course with an on-campus component are fully vaccinated. And less than 8% of students received an approved request for reasonable accommodation. And some of those did include working very specifically with students who were in the VAX series, who maybe just needed a little bit more time to be fully compliant with the policy. So it was a heavy lift, but it was one that I think was successfully implemented due to the collaboration across many departments and divisions at the college. Are there any additional questions before I turn it over to Dr. DeBurley?
Okay, thank you. If we could have the next slide, please. So what you have here is a program enrollment by school of selected programs. And these selected programs are ones that we have shown you in the past. These tend to be the higher enrolled programs. And what we provided this time are the differences from September 10th, so from the fall to the January 27th date, as the term started on the 28th. What we've indicated is by and large what we see normally, which is between a 20 to 25% attrition between the fall and the spring. So some of this is quite normal but not great. However, I do have an answer for Trustee McDonald because we did actually look to see on the completion rates in January, and I could, as I go through, if we look at general studies, when you look at the head count, and again, we look at credits because of course that's where the revenue is, but as far as head count was concerned, where we lost 20% from 959 to 763, we did, however, graduate 72 students in that group.
Okay.
Sorry, 42 students in that group, not 72. So there is some, there's some completion going on. One of the complications, as always, is we have so many part-time students who are stopping in and stopping out. In business, from 333 to 273, we had 20 students who completed one of those degrees. In criminal justice, we had 18. In engineering science transfer, we had 8 students. So from 196 to 178, we had 8 students that completed. In nursing, we have no one that completes because that's a lockstep program. But you do notice the attrition in nursing. This is, again, something that's happening all over the country, but it is a concern in that our nurses, our nursing students are stopping out because of either personal and childcare issues and all sorts of competing factors. So that is something that we're watching quite carefully. And in fact, we're coming up for our nursing accreditation site visit now in March. In health science, we had only about 3 students completing. Again, we have about 10% down in those numbers. In computer IT security, we'll be looking at that. We had 10 students completing there. So if you're looking at 159 down to 132, but you had another 10 students who actually completed. In mechanical engineering, we had from 123 head count to 98 with 12 students completing. And then in the human services, which as you see was sort of flat insofar as head count was concerned, but down insofar as credits was concerned, we did have 7 students completing there. So this is just, again, a snapshot of selected programs in the schools, the higher enrolled, to show you what happens in our sort of attrition rates from fall to spring. And again, as Vice President Kemp mentioned, there's a lot of work going on between student affairs and academic affairs over the retention issue. And that's very much a topic of conversation that faculty are also having. Any questions about that? Thank you. Then I'll turn it over to Dr. Butler.
Hang on, this is Bill Johnson. I've got one question. Not that we all like to be in the same frying pan, but are we running similar to other community colleges? I mean, I know STCC is only technical community college, but I mean, so it's hard to get a comparison, but is it at least somewhat close to the other community colleges?
Yes, I'm sorry to say that the community colleges are all of the same deep mire in enrollment across the state.
Yeah, like I said, not that it makes it any better, but at least it's kind of, it just kind of shows what's going on overall.
It does indeed.
Right.
It does indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. DeBurley, it's Betty. I just have a quick question. You mentioned the nursing. Are the other community colleges seeing that, like Holyoke? I don't know if they still have nursing up at Berkshire, but Greenfield, are they all down too?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in nursing. Well, there's a lot going on in the health programs because of number one, the clinical placement challenges, the increases on the percentages of the need to have additional clinical instructors because the placement sites themselves. Also challenges are the vaccination and booster requirements that have now been introduced in January. So of course, our SHIPS dean and our assistant deans in the health have also been spending a lot of time reaching out to our long-term facilities in particular on verifications. So there are a lot of challenges vis-a-vis vaccination requirements. And those seem to be also impacting how our students sort of manage their enrollments in the programs.
Okay.
In addition. So there are lots of levels of complications and what's happening in the health areas that are COVID related in a sense.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we can move on to Dr. Butler's portion.
So good evening, Trustee McDonald and board committee members. I am going to take you on a brief walkthrough of where we are with outcomes related to our marketing efforts for the reinstated programs. As part of a multifaceted marketing campaign at the program level for the 5 programs, that included video creation, digital ads that were pop-ups on social media, as well as other websites, radios, and branded giveaways, something we also know as swag. I'm going to show you where we landed, looking at the dates from when we began in May 2021 to January 2022 is what this time period covers. So a brief walkthrough from left to right. At the top row on the left, using Biomedical as an example, you will see that during the time that we've been running advertising at the program level for this particular program, using this top row here, we have had 3,518 clicks on our advertisements. Next column over, you'll see that these clicks resulted in a total of 32 actual inquiries that came either through the website, that number 23, through our online career services software tool called Career Coach, which had 8, and Hobson's, which is a software program used by high school guidance counselors as a search tool, where we see that there was 1 click. The next column shows that these inquiries resulted in a total of 14 applications being generated. 11 were actually completed and 3 remain incomplete. Of the 14 applications year to date that we have received, a total of 8 students enrolled in the program, 2 of which are new, 6 are continuing in the program from this year, for a total of 82 credits that the 8 students are taking. The total spend for Biomedical in fiscal year 21 was $9,935, and in the fiscal year 22, $15,316. And that amounts to just over $25,000. So if you follow that same reporting for the other 4 programs, you'll see, looking at the bottom row, far right column, a total ad spend of $112,700, rounded up, taking into consideration that 52 students were enrolled in the programs, taking a number of 472 credits. So that is an overview of the slide outcomes as it relates to the outcomes of our marketing efforts for our reinstated programs. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, if there are no questions, thank you, Dr. Butler. We can move on to our conversation with the All-Unit Congress.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Our campus community is in the beginning of celebrating and learning from the rich heritage of Black History Month. and also recognizing the Lunar New Year and Year of the Tiger. And I wanted to call attention to that to highlight the amazing programming that is done on our campus by Vanetta Lightfoot in the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And the first update I have for you from the AUC is relevant to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Last semester, an ad hoc committee was convened to explore how the AUC and shared governance could support the Anti-Racism and Inclusion Alliance in the college and also advance DEI. After meeting for several months, the ad hoc committee presented a proposal in December to the AUC General Assembly, and the proposal was to expand the number of AUC standing committees from 4 to 5 to include a DEI standing committee. The bylaws require a pause between 2 General Assembly meetings where there is a change to the bylaws to ensure that broad knowledge and opportunity for questions is available. The proposal was passed at our most recent meeting last week. So this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will assist the shared governance process by ensuring that an equity lens is applied when providing support and resources towards decision-making. The makeup of the committee was recommended by the ad hoc committee to be best done by bringing representation from many groups across campus, including the AIA, the Black Professionals Group, the LGBTQIA+ group, HAHE, the Hispanic Association Higher Education, and of course, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and leaving room for other future affinity groups. The power of the DEI Standing Committee of the AUC includes the acknowledgement of experiences of people of color and other marginalized groups on our campus, and then to actively engage all campus constituents in the pursuit of equity for those groups. The ad hoc committee presented the role of a standing committee as part of shared governance to be vital to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion across our campus, and the AUC agreed. The second update I wanted to give you is regarding the AUC and student government participation. This committee discussed the participation of students in shared governance the last time we met, and you had a specific question about that. So I first went to our AUC bylaws to review the participation guidelines regarding students. And students, since the inception of the AUC, have always been welcome to bring concerns forward for the AUC to address, and also for student representation to be invited to attend AUC General Assembly meetings. These 2 things have been codified in the AUC bylaws since its inception. I met with student government leadership and Andrea Tarpey, as well as the student trustee, to understand more of their thoughts on how they wish to be included and their vision of student government collaborating with AUC shared governance. We had a great conversation, and it was explained to me at the time that the Student Government Association bylaws are still formulated around the shared governance model from before the AUC being developed. And so we talked about that a little bit, and I explained the current AUC bylaws and left it for them to discuss. After our meeting, the Student Government Association reached out and followed up with an email agreeing that they were excited to work within the current parameters of the bylaws and expand student participation in the AUC. So moving forward, a shared governance, a student government leader will attend the coordinating committee meeting of the AUC. During this meeting, agenda making is the primary focus. And so this would allow the student government leader to bring forward campus concerns to that group and get them immediately on the AUC General Assembly agenda. And then also be able to attend the AUC General Assembly meeting so that they could, if they felt they wanted to speak to those issues, they could do that. So this is following current bylaws. And then obviously the opportunity to expand upon this after we create our shared vision with both trustees and students for shared governance, and ultimately approve that process or improve that process. So those are the 2 issues of AUC progress. So I guess before I move forward, or should I continue to move forward?
Yeah, just one question. How is that student leader being designated, Christina? Is it that's going to participate? What was that process set up?
So they discussed, they discussed that the kind of, I guess, the person that would be responsible for attending would be the student government president. The input from student government advisor was that having a trustee might be a conflict of interest per se. And so that the student government president would be the better choice. That was a conversation they had. I was there, but I was not included in that conversation. I really wanted it to be about them deciding on their own participation so that we could align our vision together.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
I do also want to make note, since we're talking about, or shared governance was mentioned, that we are engaging with a consultant who is going to go through several mechanisms to talk with everyone, work with all of us on what our shared governance will look like moving forward. It is also delightful to see that Eduardo Marty is on today with us. So thank you for that. But I do want to make sure that I highlight that and address that we will be developing a comprehensive shared governance mechanism for moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So the concerns that we want to bring forward first relate to program viability. We understand that the shared governance mechanism does not have the power to make decisions regarding program suspension or termination. But instead, we did reach out to Dr. DeBurley to ask her to keep us informed of the process by which the decisions would be made. We did this immediately upon hearing about some of the budget deficits that were likely in fiscal year 2023 at September trustee meetings, and preemptively opened these conversations. Dr. DeBurley has begun to have open forums with faculty to discuss the decision-making process in collaboration with CFO Andrea Nathanson. These two meetings have been well attended by faculty and have included information sharing from Dr. DeBurley, like quantitative and qualitative data examples, discussion of resources to assist programs, including marketing, and new software that would provide job demand data and help explore overall metrics. The AUC was hopeful that faculty participation would help to perhaps build, or at least to understand, the guardrails in a process that could end in very difficult decisions. And especially with a preliminary goal of being as transparent as possible, to at least begin to trust the data and be sure that it was prepared and shared in advance of decision-making. And so we have had two meetings without any real progress towards a process. And so one of the concerns we have is we now know motions are coming forward this evening to discuss suspension of two programs. And although each has a distinct reason, and even faculty members from programs being privy to the decision, we did hope that an understandable process would be developed before decisions would be made. We felt it would be key to warning, or perhaps creating a probationary period for the campus community, and allowing faculty that may not have easy transitions to other roles to have warnings for themselves, as well as to kind of build trust in the process for the campus. So we're hopeful that these forums will continue and bring us closer to understanding the process by which the decisions are made, so that faculty and the entire campus community can have knowledge and ultimately impact situations before termination or suspension of programs is necessary.
Okay, I just want to also add, provide one point of clarification, and Dr. Cook, please feel free to jump in if I'm wrong. But, according to the agenda of tonight and according to the meeting packet, there is no actual motion being brought forward in this meeting for the discontinuation of the programs.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The second concern I'd like to bring forward is regarding staff participation in the AUC. There are several reasons why staff may not participate in shared governance, for many individual and dynamic reasons. But I think that staff participation is also some of the hardest to understand in shared governance, because a lot of the focus is on input towards non-academic policy making. But no matter what the reason, I have brought this forward to Dr. Cook during our AUC leadership meetings, and asked him to just share some messaging about the importance of the staff voice in shared governance. It's a void that I think certainly has to be filled. And although, again, there are individual reasons why, I think we need to balance the voice of faculty with staff voices in shared governance. And then the third concern is related to internal campus concerns regarding support from human resources. At each of the previous town hall meetings, The 3 shared governance leaders have brought in varied questions forward from the campus community about sometimes the absence, delayed timing, or other support or lack thereof from the Human Resources Department. And so Dr. Cook has encouraged us to capture data about this. And so in light of this request, our Ask Me steward, Kim Noel, has spearheaded a data collection process to inquire from our campus constituents what their experiences have been, both those that are positive and those needing improvement, and sent out a campus survey, which the AUC has shared with body members to allow for feedback and data collection. And so this data would be compiled and shared with Dr. Cook and Dr. Casey Senni to allow them the opportunity to have this data and then to respond. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to discontinued reinstated program outlooks.
All right, thank you, trustees. I'd like to introduce Dean Lara Sharp, our dean from the school. I'm sorry about my voice. The School of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. She will be going through some of these slides, but I also want to note the presence of Dr. Lisa Rapp, who's been the program chair for our biotechnology program, who is here really to answer any questions that there might be. If we go on to the first slide, as Dean Sharp goes through these slides, I do want to note that in the same way that we've said, these are all snapshots of enrollment information, but you do have historically information about enrollments in courses so that you can see at the course level what the average enrollments have been in these programs. And with that, I will turn it over to Dean Sharp.
Thank you, Dr. DeBurley. So the first program I want to talk about is Biotechnology. This is a certificate of completion program of 27 credits and an AS degree of 65 credits. It is part of our biology department. It has 4 specific biotechnology courses that you can see on the slide at the bottom. And recently, I approached Dr. Rapp and asked her to consider the possibility of embedding biotechnology as a concentration within our biology transfer degree. She was receptive to the idea and agreed to take it to her colleagues in the biology department. And since then, they've had a couple of meetings, and from what we've heard feedback-wise is that the reception has been positive so far in those conversations. The reason why I approached Dr. Rapp about this concentration is, as you can see from the average enrollment in the 4 major biotechnology courses, they tend to historically be very low. The other issue is completion in the degree and certificate programs continues to be in single digits, or at times no completions for certain years. The other reason for bringing this forward is that job placement in the area is low. Most of the jobs are in Eastern Massachusetts, not so much in Western Massachusetts. And also Holyoke Community College has invested quite a bit of money into their biotechnology degree program. And even with that large investment, they struggle to pull 24 students into their program. Next slide.
I have a question.
Sorry. Yes.
No, it's okay. Okay, so it's kind of a 2-part question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the specific like career fields or type of work that someone would do with this certificate program? And then the other question is, so it's not necessarily that we are eliminating the courses because they're still needed towards the degree program, but this specific 27 credit program is what it may be recommended to remove. Am I understanding this correctly?
So I'm going to address the second part, and I'm hoping that Dr. Rapp would be willing to address the first part about the careers. So the second part is, yes, we're actually asking that 3 of the 4 classes remain as part of the biology department, and they would be considered a concentration in that biotechnology area. So a student who would be going through biology transfer degree could choose those 3 classes that are kept. And that way, that would give them opportunities at Westfield State University and UMass if they choose to transfer to those 2 institutions to continue in biotechnology if they wish. So yes, it's the AS degree and the certificate of completion that we would recommend be discontinued.
Oh, wait a minute. So it is both the certificate and the associate's degree. So both the 27 credits and the 65?
Correct.
If I may just note, when you have a certificate program, it's folded into the AS. They don't stand alone. They're connected to each other. So if when you have an AS and you have a certificate program, they're not standalone. So that's why the certificate would be that. And what we're looking at is a suspension of admissions because of the numbers, and of course all the of what happens subsequent to that with those students.
Right. So in a lot of cases, I'm sorry. So also in the biotechnology AS degree, a lot of those courses contain the same biology classes that the students would get if they were in a biology transfer degree. So the real big change here would be to eliminate one of the biotechnology courses and then keep the other 3 as part of an elective series that a student could take as a concentration.
Okay.
I mean, let me help be real candid, and then again, I think it will help for our faculty member to share the job and the career outlook. So let me try to really, for our trustees, if you see the data and we acknowledge the premise, which is enrollment has been very, very difficult, and despite an investment of significant marketing dollars, we have not been able to change the outcome. If we accept that, if we see that, then we realize continuing as we are is going to be problematic. Especially, this is why we show it at the course level. We have difficulty being able to assign a faculty member a teaching load because you see those averages. And by the way, that average is based on from 2015 to present. Current situation is we've got courses with 2 or 3 students in them. So we really are compelled to take action. What is a credit to everybody involved here tonight, trustees, is this idea of folding it. So yes, the recommendation on the table, we'll get to that, is suspend admission because we still do have to do a teach out for the students, and that in a part-time model can take up to 2 years. So a teach out where we suspend admission, and then we want, again, in a way to slow down the pace for everyone to get their heads around this, have you try on for size at your April meeting consideration of a discontinuation. Again, let's let the data settle in. Let's try on for size the issues here and realize where we can, we will try to be artful in this case of retaining the content, but better putting into a biology transfer pathway that typically has 45 or 50 students in it in a given year. So as you let that sink in, again, we know that this is a big consideration. There's no vote. Administratively, we would do the suspension of admission, but we do ensure that trustees have the vote ultimately under the program decision. Let me give our faculty member a chance to just talk about the career outlook and that certificate degree piece.
Dr. Cook, if I may, Bill Johnson, I just got one brief question, which can be answered later or whatever. Prior to 2019, if I'm hearing this correctly, this program was struggling prior to COVID with the completion rate and admissions. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
Okay, that's why when I'm trying to wrap my arms around that, it was kind of like it was struggling prior. And that's where I'm going with this. Okay, thank you.
And just before we get into the career portion of it, part question and comment, and I'm sure that other trustees would be interested in seeing what the financial difference may be between how it is now and then how it is folded into. I mean, because what it sounds like to me is, and I still am working to wrap my mind around this, is that we're essentially just removing one of the courses, which then takes away the eligibility for the certificate, although the certificate cannot stand alone, and students will still have access to those other courses, but as an elective. So I would just like to see if there's any financial difference between having this, although the enrollment is low, and what the cost would be removing the other one, taking away the certificate, et cetera, because I imagine that may come up at the larger board meeting as well. So
Sure. And again, I appreciate the line of questions. Ultimately, right, you'll see we're not only seeming to justify this on the dollars and cents, because ultimately at the end of the day, there are far larger programs where we've had a whole conversation around how much we might lose on larger programs, right? These are smaller margins. Part of this is the lack of sustainability and effectiveness of teaching classes with 2 or 3 students in them, 4 students, 5 students. That's not an effective education model. That's been a lot of the difficulty internally on our conversations. We can debate if, oh, it only costs X number of dollars to teach 4 students. But again, that's not a vibrant, robust experience for those students. It also is problematic in terms of trying to get our full-time faculty a teaching load. So that's part of the response to that part, is it's not nearly just about the dollars and cents attached to these decisions. Again, let me give Lisa a chance to jump in here if you want to share, Lisa, honestly, how much you've invested in your outlook and the fact that Western Mass still clearly isn't the 495 beltway with biotechnology.
That's actually, excuse me, a really good way to look at it. When I was first hired here in 1999, I remember being really excited about it, and there literally being a newspaper article the week I was hired talking about how biotech would be coming to Western Mass, and I'm still waiting. And that really is the biggest issue, is that we don't have the industry to support our graduates. I know someone asked, like, what kind of jobs do they do? So primarily think about a lab technician type job, but not in a clinical setting, but instead in a pharmaceutical company or a biotechnology company. So they would be either testing either medical devices or medicines themselves for things such as sterility, contamination with viruses, bacteria, and also manufacture of medicines, vaccines. So there are jobs, Worcester and East. There are few jobs, mostly in testing, a small manufacturing facility out in the Berkshires, but just not enough to sustain the number of students, and also working against an industry bias towards hiring students with a bachelor's degree or higher in those particular positions. Out in the Eastern Mass, there's almost less of that bias because they need more people. So they're more willing to hire a community college student. They need the bodies, but that's less true out here. And I know I wanted to make something that I think wasn't terribly clear. The Bio 263 and Bio 265 courses are currently required of biology transfer majors. So it's essentially an easier sell to tell a student to take one class, and hey, you've got this little bit of background of biotechnology that will help you when you transfer to hopefully get you a job in a major industry in Massachusetts. And the cost of the course that we get let go of, yeah, it's not significant, but lab supplies are fairly significant, even just for a single course. Hopefully I answered everybody's questions.
And what is the salary range? Some ballpark figures for.
Some ballpark figures. So at the associate's degree level, you're talking about starting at maybe $30,000 a year. The higher the degree, the more you're going to make. So if a bachelor's degree, you might start at 45 to 50K, et cetera. The biggest in terms of numbers of hires is at the bachelor's degree and master's degree level across the state. there are positions for associate's degree students, just not in Western Massachusetts in numbers that can sustain this program.
Okay, so we're not talking like something where someone could come out of this making 90,000 and it may be worth their while to drive to Worcester or Boston or something like that to do this type of work.
Well, and the growth is there. So, I mean, I have had students who've gotten an associate's degree and started out at that 30K position. And I have one of mine from just a few years back, and he's worked his way up and he's making close to 6 figures. So, but he's the exception and not the rule. So most of our students see Worcester. It may as well be Colorado to them. And that's been an issue for most of my student population, unfortunately. Even trying to get someone to take an internship out in, I'm going to forget which town in the Berkshires, there's Berkshire Sterile Manufacturing. They don't have either the transportation or the childcare cost or whatever to make that happen. So it's been an issue.
Okay.
This is Bill Johnson. I got 2 comments, I guess. Those numbers sound so low to me. My Class A CDL drivers can make $50,000 to $90,000 a year. You know, with just going to I think it's like a 60-hour course, get their CDL, and then once they get trained up. And the other observation I want to make is I'm just reading the slide here. It says Holyoke Community College just invested a recent multi-million-dollar investment in the same course. Sometimes you got to say uncle. When you're in business, it's like, I granted technically, I guess we're in competition with HCC, but it is still one Commonwealth, one, community college throughout the state. And sometimes you got to know when somebody if they get more investment, you just yield and let them take it over that part of the market. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but
I was at a meeting.
Well,
And I was at a meeting with the chair of that program on Friday, and they have enrollment issues as well.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. So why should we be fighting and have 2 programs that aren't doing well and just let one program is the same area do well or try to do better, I guess. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm sorry. I know we didn't get to the second program, but please continue.
Next slide, please. So the next program I wanted to talk about was Biomedical Engineering Technology, otherwise known as BMET. This is an AS program. It also has issues with low enrollment. These were going on to address a comment that was made before. This has been continuous over several years. Also, job placement is also very difficult for this position as well in the area. So Biomedical Engineering Technology is a degree program that focuses on biomedical devices. Typical job placement for this is in hospitals, and the clinical engineering director at Bay State Medical Center has been very good about taking our phone calls and talking to us about this program. And he's very helpful, but he even said that he could possibly, only hire one, and there's no guarantee that one would be every year as well. So, that's the largest hospital we have in the area. So, again, this is another one where the larger amount of the jobs are out in Eastern Massachusetts. There is no full-time faculty for this AS degree right now. There was a search done last year and it failed because there were no viable candidates. Even if there were, as you can see from the enrollments in the classes, on average from 2018, it would be hard to come up with a full-time faculty teaching load. with this enrollment. Are there questions on biomedical?
I think just my comment would be, if there's a plan to bring this before the full board, kind of giving all of this, but also being able to encompass some of the questions and things that we went through in regards to the first program, as well as like the financials. I think that's going to be really important in expressing, your want for this decision, or for the board to back it up.
Okay, thank you. Next slide.
This
sorry.
is Betty Sposito. I just have a comment. I'm very appreciative of seeing how detailed this is, and what's the outcome if someone graduates, and where can they go? And what's the job opportunities in our area? Because with the comment being made about, some people feel that going to Worcester is like going to Colorado, but they can't do it. And they don't have control over why they can't do it. They can't relocate a family and that. So I really appreciate the background and the work that's been put into this. So down the road, making a better uninformed decision. I think this is great. Thank you.
Next slide. So in summary, our recommendations are on 2 action items. The first one is on policy, to ask for or to recommend the suspension of admission for biotechnology and biomedical engineering technology programs, and to discuss and decide potential program discontinuation vote for the committee in April. Another recommendation under operational is that we would ask the biology faculty, along with Dr. Rapp, to continue working on the concentration for biotechnology within the biology transfer degree. We would also alert the Department of Higher Education about the potential program discontinuation. And as Dr. Cook mentioned, we would create teach out programs and advising programs for the students that are currently in the programs, so that they could have a pathway to either completion or to a possible change in degree program within STEM. And finally, in terms of faculty, Dr. Rapp would continue teaching in the biology program. And as I said before, there is no faculty in biomedical engineering technology, so there would be no reassignment there. Any questions on this slide?
I have a question, but not particularly on just going back to in trying to absorb this. I'm trying to wrap my mind around the bio in the previous presentation you did. Am I to understand that the standalone certificate of the bio and the other AS program, that you would incorporate those things into the other one so that we no longer have the standalone? Is that?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand what I'm hearing. Correct. So okay. All right. Yeah, I got you.
And maybe what we could do next time is sort of show a graphic of how that would merge.
May I also add something to the trustees? When we look at program enrollment, we also have to understand that students can enroll in a program, but they in fact may not be taking any courses in the program because of prerequisites that they need to take before they actually enroll in the program. And very often, sometimes they never enroll in those programs. In the case of biotech, one of the things that often happens is that students go ahead and take what's perhaps the first year sort of courses, but they don't continue. So in looking at, for example, when you were asking about the certificate programs, since 2012, we've had exactly 8 students complete the certificate program. So again, the completion rate is very, very low.
Thank you for that additional information. Any other questions?
If I may, to put a summary on this, and I know there's one more slide here. We realize this is very big, you know, to revisit this, to really paint the picture. Again, for us, we are really trying to build back to scale, to be more integrated, to be more intentional, certainly with fiscal matters, and we'll certainly bring that into the conversation. And obviously this was, again, always about smaller programs with much smaller fiscal considerations, even when we have a big number like a $5 million hole hanging out there, everybody. In this case, again, we're grateful that there's a partnership with faculty administrators to sort of find a way where, again, we've got a typically vibrant biology transfer degree. We can add a biotech element to that. That will kind of help lift both simultaneously. But again, fundamentally, this is a new approach, and we are, and with the backdrop of a governance conversation, really trying to do well to show, okay, let's hold the admissions piece, because with part-time students, again, it can take 2 years to do well by them in a future discontinuation. So let's start that and give everyone a couple months worth to try on for size. Is this the spot, particularly for trustees, to exercise your authority to ultimately make that decision? So again, that's what we want to leave you with time to think through. And again, we'll provide any and additional data and detail that will help you with that decision making.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, you can move on to the next slide.
The last thing that we wanted to do is provide a program outlook for civil engineering technology and landscape design and management programs. As you can see, we've got average course enrollments since 2015 for both, and in many cases, they continue to be single digits. And for this semester, civil engineering currently has around 21 students, and landscape has approximately 11 students. Again, this is just for information reasons. There's no recommendations here.
Okay. There are no questions or comments. We're going to move on to strategic planning.
Okay, yes, hi again. I just wanted to give a brief update on where we are with our strategic planning efforts. We have received recommendations for a faculty co-chair. Conversations are happening with those who have been recommended by Academic Affairs. Thank you, Provost DeBurley and deans. And we hope to have a co-chair solidified by the end of the week. DHE has been contacted, and a liaison is forthcoming. I've been invited to attend the Strategic Planning Advisory Council meetings as they are reviewing and, if necessary, revising or amending the current guidelines. So more to come there. The RFQ was sent out. The Executive Committee of the Board received a copy as well. It was sent out January 19th, and quotes are due in February 9th. We hope to have at least 2 to 3 submissions from which to select. We held 2 listening sessions on Professional Day, January 20th. We had over 45 attendees between both sessions, and notes from the conversation are posted online, and they will inform the rubric that will be developed when a co-chair is appointed and we begin to select the consultant. The consultant selection will involve conferring with the president, cabinet, and our campus governance leaders as part of the process. And February, the end of the month, February 28th, we will convene an official launch sometime that week and an introduction of the consultant to the community. In March, we want to launch. We want to get ready. We're going to be seeking members across campus to submit to be participants to join the Strategic Planning Task Force. By March 14th, we will share the list of task force members with the community at large. There will be certainly communications through campus email, the newsletter, announcements from division heads and academic leaders. We want to take a multi-pronged communications approach and an all call for involvement from the community. And then March through December, the work will continue. It'll be an inclusive process, and we really want to timeline things in a way that gives voice to our community. So there's going to be sort of a lull in the summer because we want our faculty partners there at the table when they're on contract working with us, but it will be an inclusive process. And we are looking forward to working with the board, with DHE as liaisons are selected and appointed. And of course, we will ensure the voice of the community. We will have focus group surveys, environmental scans, all in place as part of our process, because it's very important to get the voice of our campus community, but also the community at large and our partners externally. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you. We'll be close to having a consultant because it closes tomorrow, right? The
Wednesday the 9th. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Do you want to review?
I think it's me. No, I'll jump in. We put in a few of those slides in that we had shared with the board. Obviously.
Oh, okay. That confused me.
Yeah, that's all that is a reference. Thank you behind the scenes, everybody, too. Obviously, at core will be the Commonwealth's equity agenda and supporting students of color. Again, we wanted to show some of the investments that we've previously discussed with the board. So that's really what that backdrop is. My great thanks to Dr. Butler for serving as co-chair of that. Not dissimilar from the self-study and accreditation, it will be a college-wide, all-encompassing process to engage in strategic planning. I'm really looking forward to that. I think there's a lot of reason for us to be optimistic about that process. So thank you. As she noted, we are hoping to have a faculty co-chair in place by the end of the month. If I may, Madam Chair, I'll just segue. First, let me just give a thank you for the diligence, as you see, by administrators, a real deep dive into enrollment at the top by our Vice Presidents of Student Affairs, Academic Affairs. Throw in our STEM Dean, Lara Sharp, thank you, and Shay Butler with that sort of marketing overview. There's a lot of care and attention given over to our operational position, trying to invest in support programs, being very conscientious and realistic about where we are with all of that. So I'm really grateful. Again, let me put a fine point on trustees. Essentially, we have sounded you out on these two programs we have discussed. We will administratively then discontinue admission. Essentially, we're going to put a pause on that. Again, I just want to be sure we're all open-eyed about that. And that gives us a chance to think. And again, come April, we'll reassess with you about the program status. But I don't want to lose track of that thread when we do move those two actions forward. Let me just pause there and see if there are any additional last questions on that administrative action.
What do you mean by program status, right? I mean, because if you're going to pause admissions, that means there's no more room, or there won't be any more room to see if there's any more growth.
Yeah, essentially what we've done is we've spent the $25,000 per program. It's yielded, right, very, very modest student enrollment, as opposed to continuing to, let's say, have 2 more students potentially join by this fall, adding 2 more students to a teach out that is already very difficult. That's essentially exactly what we are sharing our contemplation with you, is really trying to put a gate down right now and then entertaining that idea of actually discontinuation. That's what we are sharing with you this evening.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
All right, so on that, then I'll move forward. And again, we will We will manage that admissions piece of it. We will certainly come back and have this conversation very robustly with the committee in April. 3 items. On the personnel front, you'll see again a report. A few things to point out. In human resources, we have hired a second assistant director of human resources who will serve as the Title IX coordinator. My appreciation to Dr. Casey Sedney, who has done a restructure. The previous model was a assistant VP and a director. Casey has now gone with that assistant VP and 2 assistant directors, which I think is a really helpful division of duties. We've got Deborah Rico coming in, who comes to us with a lot of HR background, was most recently at American International College. So appreciate that. Again, just pointing out a couple items on that list, trustees. There was a promotion, Jennifer Superba. She probably would be embarrassed to hear me mentioning her, but she's one of those amazing workers who flies under the radar. She was the administrative assistant to our CIO for a number of years and was just recently promoted into a technical specialist. One was an AFSCME unit position. Now this other one is an MCCC unit position. She's one of those wonderfully talented, incredibly hardworking individuals that we have here at the college, and I couldn't help but give a mention of her promotion. Separations, what you'll see is we do not have the full accounting of separations because of the employee vaccine requirement. So you will see that on the April list. And again, in the scheme of things, we talked about it at the full board meeting. There is not a huge wave otherwise given that obligation. And what you'll see on the new hires list is by and large part-time employees in that sort of non-union, non-benefited position, which is often a lot of the bulk of our sort of comings and goings. So that's that personnel report. Happy to pause there and see if there are questions. Okay. In terms of budget elements, more of a brief mention, and particularly because obviously through Ways and Means, we'll be having very robust budget conversations, talking about the fiscal outlook and sharing those with Ways and Means and mapping out draft budgets with them over the next few months. But for this group, wanted to give voice to this notion of at least us considering what's called early retirement incentive, sometimes referred to as an ERIP, an early retirement incentive program. We did this last year. And again, with a great deal of candor and detail, let me share with the committee, there are lots of considerations with an early retirement incentive when you are a public community college and you have different types of employees, including 2 unions, because those are collectively bargained. The details are a little different from our non-unit, our exempt professionals. All that is to say, it can be a very costly endeavor. Typically, if you're a state employee in Massachusetts, if you give a year's notice, there's a formula by which you will gain a certain percentage of your last year's salary. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that's 20%. So there is a little bit of a windfall if you give a year's notice. And obviously that helps an organization with some succession planning. By the way, you also have the ability to rescind that all the way up to the day before. So it's not always a done deal. So sometimes colleges will put what's called the retirement incentive on top of that. They'll waive the year's notice and they'll say, and we'll sweeten the deal by $10,000 or $15,000. In some cases, some employees may walk away with $40,000 or $50,000. That comes out of the college's budget. And so last year, we only had, I believe, 5 employees who sought that employee retirement incentive. We may not be able to afford it this year. So again, we are trying out for size. We've had conversations with our different governance bodies about the possibility. We'll see where we can get when we certainly massage the numbers. So again, just wanted to share on the personnel side of this, at least the consideration. And oftentimes you don't see the savings until the next fiscal year, when sometimes you actually have to fill the position, but the savings sometimes is on a lower starting salary with the new individual. So all that is to say, we will try it on for size. Lastly, governance. Yes, our consultant is with us, Dr. Marti. Good to have you here tonight. I know he has been hard at work, everyone, on his consultancy. He has already been meeting and interviewing our trustees. He has been meeting with governance leaders as well. Thrilled about that. Again, there are conversations that came up different discussions we had. Obviously, the AUC share their outlook tonight. I'm really looking forward to our continued investment in this consultancy, getting clear about roles and responsibilities. I think I just come back to our accreditor's language on that piece, being very clear at the end of the day on roles and responsibilities. Let me give Eduardo a chance to just take a couple minutes to share where we're going to, because again, he's been putting together a forum that will bring different stakeholders together. But Eduardo, let me just have you share a little bit about the direction you've charted for all of us.
First of all, thank you very much for having me present at this meeting. I've learned a lot about the college, and every college is a very different unit, if you will, is like a living organism, and you have to really understand how it works in order to be able to help. So I appreciate the time. To make this very, very short, and I will be making a full report at the April meeting, but to make it very short, I would like to create a representative body of each one of the different constituencies. And I have spoken with most of you already about it, so I'm not going to insult your intelligence by repeating it. But I think that if we can get together and start talking about the issues that we can talk about in a short period of time, and then try to resolve how we can handle the processes that are required for shared governance, I think we can increase the amount of trust that needs to exist in a college in order for it to operate. So I'm trying to go very fast, but because I know that your time is valuable, but I'm very encouraged. I really believe that there is a lot of goodwill among all of the individuals that I've spoken with. And I believe that we are going to be able to have a report that will satisfy the concerns of NECHI and more than satisfy them. I think it will be good for the institution for years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll end on a somewhat somber note, everyone. Again, for the committee, you see very much marching ahead with some real key initiatives: governance, strategic planning, programmatic considerations, enrollment effort. Many of you know and will have heard the name Raymond Jordan, a real titan, first African-American representative for the city of Springfield, passed away. Like we did with, terribly and unfortunately, Ron Johnson, another significant leader in the Springfield community. You will see a tribute to Ray Jordan up on our website now. We honor his legacy. It is a painful day for so many in Springfield, and I share that with this committee in particular. And again, the college is doing its part to be sure that we recognize a man for a life incredibly lived. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Any old business? Any new business? Okay, see Mary Kate shaking her head. All right, so we are going to adjourn the meeting. The next meeting will be April 4th at 5 p.m. Nanette, can you take a roll call, please?
Yes, Mary Kate Mirren,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
and Monique Seldom Riley.
Yes.